Well, Prince Harry should have been in court yesterday. He is today, and he is doing some huge talking. He is talking about a lifetime of his relationship with the press, and he's apparently quite softly spoken inside the courtroom. But just some of the things that he is saying, our colleagues in London with this summation.
And very strikingly, Prince Harry says at paragraph 197, he says this, that trolls react and mobilise stories they create. People have died as a result. So poignantly, in his witness statement, he mentions Caroline Flack, who was indeed driven to her death by the tabloid press, although strikingly, when the tabloid reported the coroner's results, apparently, they just did not report the fact that the coroner attributed blame to the press.
He's also ripped into the then newspaper editor Piers Morgan. He's talked about when he didn't have a mobile phone, and that's necessary to the stories that were apparently being written about him. He says, among other things, that some of the things that he had to deal with as a kid was who his father was, and all of the timeline, when you actually go back and look at that situation, well, shows that Charles is his father. There's a lot happening right now. Just a slice of it as it's happening. Nigel Farage, the Brexit leader, GB News host, no doubt will be going through all of this in the middle of the night, Australian time, prime time in the UK. He joins us now from London. All right, Nigel, we all know that this was difficult for him to prove that specifically the Mirror Group had done illegal things, but he's using his moment on the stand to shoot as many as he can verbally.
Yes, that's right. I mean, look, what happened here with our press, which, had in the past been very, very vicious, I mean, no other press in the world like it, is it was only Rupert Murdoch's newspapers that got convicted of phone hacking. Don't tell me it was just the Murdoch press doing it. And so I understand why Harry, in this action against the Mirror Group, is saying the things that he's saying. And the Mirror Group themselves have admitted that some of the stories they published back in the day were obtained through means that weren't perhaps within the law. So in a sense, I understand why Harry is taking this case. However, to use his 55-page opening statement to even attack the government, to say that the UK government is now at rock bottom, strikes me as treading off into the world of politics, which perhaps he ought not to be doing. But here's the real problem. The real problem is he's going to be in that witness stand for the best part of 2 days. He will be cross-examined by one of the sharpest-minded barristers in the land. And I can just imagine, I mean, if I was that barrister defending the Mirror, I would say, well, Prince Harry, given that you admit to regular, repeated taking of all kinds of illegal drugs, how on earth can we trust your memory from that time? Do you see what I mean? He's putting himself, I think on a personal level, in a very dangerous position, and he could emerge from these 2 days with lots of supposition, very little proof, and a personality that is made out to the rest of the world to be even weaker than we thought it was before. I understand his motives. His mother died in horrific circumstances when he was a young boy. I understand the emotion, but I think he's making a very, very big mistake.
I noticed today that Johns Hopkins University in the US, and echoed through the Telegraph in the UK, the reporting today is that, surprise, surprise, COVID lockdowns didn't actually save that many lives and really weren't worth it compared to what we now know now as the trauma of everything from mental health through to school results of kids. We knew this from day one, but good to see at least somebody of eminence starting to notice this. Yet, any apology from government today? There was none in Australia. Was there one in the UK?
Not a word. And I've been demanding this on my TV show every day. Can you please apologise? You made a series of catastrophic errors. We might forgive you the first lockdown, but we most certainly do not forgive you the second and the third lockdown, by which time senior members of the British medical profession were saying that by closing everything up, we would long-term have more deaths through undiagnosed cancer and much else than we ever would have done from the virus. And, Sweden, which took a completely different approach. I mean, maybe the people in Melbourne should listen to this. Sweden didn't lock down. They've had far less economic harm, far less social harm, and their COVID inquiry is done and dusted and over. our COVID inquiry has its first public hearing today. We've already spent 100 million quid, and not a single person in government has uttered one word of apology for what they did. It really is appalling. Not only that it damaged us so much, but now we learn that the British government worked with big tech companies to censor any of us online who dared to criticise lockdowns and dared to criticise the idea that we should be jabbed so often with the COVID jab that we'd end up looking like pincushions. And anyone that criticised any of this, government worked together with those companies to silence us. I mean, it really is, the more we find out as time goes on, it is a deeply, deeply shameful episode.
Are you ready for Apple's new toy? It'll cost $3,500 American, which is about 12,000 Australian, and it's, what is it? Spatial computing. Look, I might have a play with it, but I can't imagine using it that often. What about you?
I can't think of anything more dehumanising.
Yeah.
This attempt to change our sensory awareness. It's like, you know, machines taking over our minds, taking over our imagination. I've no doubt virtual sex is not very far behind. No, for me, I'm going to stick with the real thing. I'm going to keep my own sensory awareness and not have it damaged by Apple or anybody else, let me assure you.
I can just see the headlines now. Nigel Farage, I'll do it the old way. That's the way it should always be. He's a traditionalist about borders, language, culture and love, as it should be. Now, Joe Biden, he trips over on a sandbag, yet apparently he's absolutely going to sail through to the Democratic nomination, and then we've got 4 years more of him after that. Conversely, we know what's happening with Trump right now, but honestly, the fact that the Democrats can't find somebody else to shuffle out, because the Democrats simultaneously tell us that Trump or DeSantis are worst ever and anyone could beat them. Well, then let anyone fight them. Why does it have to be Biden?
I don't think it will be. I don't think it will be. I mean, the fact, of course, that the deputy, the vice president, isn't up to the job is an embarrassment as it is. I think he'll be shuffled out at some point early next year and replaced with somebody else. I think to do so now would be to admit that they have an incompetent president. It would lead to calls for the 25th Amendment to be moved, which would say from mental and physical incapacity the president had to go. So, no, I do not believe that it'll be Biden against Trump in November 2024. Goodness knows who they'll choose. Maybe Gavin Newsom from the failed state of California. I don't know. I cannot believe that the Democrat Party and its donors will allow this man to run again. I really, really can't.
And guess who's coming to Australia with Donald Trump Jr.? TrumpLive.com.au would be the way to get tickets to see who as well?
Yes, Donald Trump Jr. is speaking on the 9th, 10th and 11th of July, public events that we're going to have in Sydney, Melbourne and Brisbane. And I've decided at the last minute I'm going to tack along.
Hey!
Alex Antic will be there on the stage with us as well. And I'm coming, well, for a couple of reasons, really. One, I don't think you get quite enough real proper conservative conversation down in Australia these days. Number two, I want you all to realise that whatever madnesses you're facing, we're facing them in America and in Britain. And number three, I really like Donald Trump Jr. He's blooming good fun. And it's going to be a great time.
Can you imagine what a trio that's going to be? Alex Antic, Donald Trump Jr., Nigel Farage, TrumpLive.com.au, TrumpLive.com.au. Thank you, great man. And remember, he'll look you in the eye because he won't have the special Apple goggles on. Thank you, mate.